In this video, we're going to be doing a sample for reinforced stitching. And it's going to start similar to the pivot, where we're going to sew down, and we're going to sew at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and we're going to pivot a 1/4 inch from the edge, and sew right here. But as we approach this corner, we want it to be really, really strong. So let's say this is like the bottom of our backpack or something. We want it to be really strong, or something like that. Anything that we want to be strong is what we're going to do reinforcement stitching, right? So I'm going to mark, because we're going to start, our stitch is going to end a 1/4 inch from the edge, right? And I want a 1/2 inch beyond that. So I'm going to go 3/4 an inch up, and I'm just going to do a little mark right here. And I'll do the same thing here so that I have a 3/4 inch from the edge. Hopefully you can see that mark. And I'm just going to mark. And these marks are going to tell me that's where I'm going to switch to reinforcement stitching, and I'll show you what that means in a second. So we'll start just like the pivot. I'm going to pull my threads back. I'm going to line up the top of my fabric with my needle, and I line up the edge of my fabric with my presser foot, and then I'm going to go ahead and sew, and I'm going to backstitch, go forward, and I'm going to sew all the way to my mark. So I'll just keep an eye for my mark. I'm getting close to it, and there I'm at my mark. And what I'm going to do here is adjust my stitching. So I'm going to lower, so this right here is the width of my stitch, right? And this is the length, and I'm going to lower the length so that it's really, really tiny, tiny stitches so that they're extra strong. So I'm going to lower it all the way down to where I'm at the 1. So I just use this button to lower it to 1. And then it's going to take tiny little bites, so it might go a little bit slower. I'm going to go until the edge of my fabric lines up with the edge of this metal bar so that I have my 1/4 inch and I can pivot. And now that I'm there, I'm going to use my hand wheel using this kind of motion where I'm pulling my thumb towards me. I'm going to do my hand wheel to put my needle down into the fabric. Once my needle is down in the fabric, I can lift up my presser foot, turn my fabric. And I don't know if you can really see it, but these stitches are tiny right here. So it goes from normal stitches to tiny stitches. I'm going to put my presser foot back down. The edge of my fabric lines up with the edge of my presser foot, so I still have a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I'm going to sew to this next mark. Once I get to the mark, I might have just passed it. Once I get to the mark, I will change my stitching back to normal. So this little dash tells me where my normal stitching is. So I'm just going to go all the way up there to the normal stitching, which is just around the 2. And that's how many millimeters. That's what those those numbers mean. I will now backstitch and lift up my presser foot, trim my threads, and I have a reinforcement stitch. So the purpose of the reinforcement stitch is just like what I was saying, it's to make it really strong. So if there's going to be a lot of stress on this corner or tension, then I can make it really strong. Or sometimes when we do corners, we have to just cut the edge. So I'm going to have you cut the edge right here, and you're going to cut close to the corner but not at it. You just cut it right there, and then I cut diagonal, so there's like a 45-degree angle, and then I'm going to cut it even a little bit more on each side, like that, so that if I had to fold my corner out, like if I folded this inside, then they would fit inside the corner, right? If I turn this right side out, if I made this a little tube, which I'm not going to make you do, but we'll just trim it like this so that it's nice and clean. And because these stitches are so strong, you can cut close to it without ruining the integrity of your project.